traffic because of construction. Hi, Fonzo. Thank you for waiting. Sorry I'm late. Okay, so we'll start with the assignment. As I told Jose and Gabe, I had tested some tools for today's lab, and I ran into a little knack with SQLite, so I'm going to push that out. We're going to use something Wireshark for network forensic today or investigation today. But we'll start with the assignment now. Let me share screen. And then let me get caption real quick. So. I mislabeled this too. We're behind them. Okay. So download your notes and your assignment, and then I'll add the video page once I convert the video today. Hey, how are you doing? Yeah, thanks. You will probably not need your drive today. I changed my mind about the lab, but I'll post the lab up shortly. Give me a second. So we'll work with the assignment first. It's not too long. We'll go through the lecture. And then we will, there's also a quiz this week. Okay, 15 questions. I put it for 90 minutes. You can do the extra credit to review for the quiz. I'm using the quiz review or the practice exam review questions. I talked to test out. I will have your license for the practice test later today or tomorrow. And then I will link it to Canvas, and I will give you your access code so you will be able to do the practice test for this class. Maybe before the weekend, right? I've been talking to their rep. They gave me the quote yesterday, so we will be able to get that ready for you. Okay, so let me get my files open real quick. So today we are going to go over 11. Chapter 11 is about incident response. There's not a lot of technical emphasis in it. Much of it is going to be like the administration part. But a lot of your certification question will likely be in the security events and incidents handling area. So when you work as a specialist, a lot of the times you are the front end for security incident. So we want to kind of address what you need to do. As an analyst, you will be dealing with delivering solutions to handle the incident. So IRP is very important. Hello, just in time. Like 8 or 9. Cactus is horrible. I calculated 20 minutes and I was under calculating. Yeah, just, yeah, Ben Clark is supposedly only about 15-20 minutes away. All right, so as we were saying, we will work with the assignment first, and then give me a few minutes after that. I will post your lab. You won't need your drive today. We can use our desktop for our lab. I think that should be fine. And then some of you that already took 27A, I'm be using some exercises from that lab. As I couldn't successfully test it Explico, so I'm rewriting the lab, and possibly when we get the forensic chapter, which is in 2 weeks, we'll be able to work with that. Okay, so we need to differentiate between security event, adverse event, and security incident, and they are very close. So we want to make sure that we distinguish these, because you are going to get questions on your practice exam and your certification in CYSA regarding these. So a security event is anything that would relate to security function. So for example, if I'm a user, I'm accessing the server to download my files, that's a security event. If I'm an attacker, I'm conducting a port scan, that's also a security event. But the adverse event is something that impacted negatively. Okay, So if I have a server crash that's becoming unavailable, so anytime that we have CIA negative impact to CIA, we would have adverse event. And a security incident is anything that violates the rules or the policy of the system and practices. So if you have some data leak, that's a security incident. If you have keylogger installed on your on the system, that's a security incident. So let's go through and answer the questions for the assignment. I had asked you to identify the activities that would fall under security events, adverse events, or security incidents. So let's go through them. For A user is locked out of the system after attempting multiple incorrect passwords. That's a security event, right? He got locked out of the system. It also initiate an event for failed or successful attempt, depending. In this case, we're going to have failed attempts on, if you're looking at Windows, that's under Event Viewer. Now, the difference between this and the security incident in that if the security incident indicates where if someone is brute forcing the password, that becomes a security incident. A security event is just an occurrence that would have some kind of security concern. So the system will log it as a security event. For B, the user downloaded a malware. That's an adverse event because the malware will negatively impact that system. So we know that this is an adverse event. So you can just add that to the answer. So for the certification, if you're using some of the practice resources, they will tell you that you need to make sure you distinguish, and the options that you're going to get is going to be pretty close. For C, company's laptop was misplaced, and potentially we might have issues with data loss. So this is an adverse event because it is a loss to the organization. It is a physical loss. So we would categorize that as an adverse event. So we have to be able to distinguish the type of events that we're dealing with when we're handling incidents that's security related. For D, a document that the customer's personal identifiable information was accidentally sent to the vendor. This is a security incident. It violates the policy because anytime you have PII information that's leaked, it violates the organization and system policy. So that means that we should have controlled the email attachment a little better, right? The rules for the email attachment. So we can create it where anytime that it has PII, it will block it from sending and receiving. Then for E, an attacker is performed escalation of privileges to access encrypted data. So in order to access encrypted data, they have to be at administrator or root level. For most part, administrator would be able to retrieve encryption key. So what we would see is that this is a security incident as it violates policy, right? He wasn't authorized to have that privilege, so he violated the rule. So that is a security incident. And then for F, an attacker is using network sniffer to detect packets on the wireless network. This is a security event, as you can see that in the example, because the attacker don't necessarily, it didn't say that it is an incident because the packets is not being used in anything that will break the rule or the regulations. So they simply scan the network. So that is a security event. So in the notes, it's going to go over the 4 phases of security incident response. Now, depending on the textbook and the resource that you're reading, some model would have a little bit more steps. But ultimately, when we're taking a look at these phases, we would understand the processes that would go into each of the phases. So in the first phase, you are going to have preparation. This is a way that we would be able to put together system, tools, software, and information that we need to investigate. And this is very similar to forensic, where in the first phase is where you would prepare by looking at your existing system. Do I have the hardware, like the storage or the server storage on the network? Do I have the software tools, the application that I need to be able to analyze, right, the data or the impacted system? Do I have all the information that I need? So in the notes, it talks about how you can go about gathering some information about the case that you're working with or the incident that you're dealing with. So normally that will come in as a report or an alarm or a notification. And with that, you would take that information to be able to further explore what kind of incident that you're working with. And each incident is going to be a little different. We'll talk about playbook in a little bit. Okay. So after we have all the things that we need, all the resources, we are going to go through and we are going to identify the security incidents that took place or that's currently taking place. That could be happening live or it could already happen, right? And so in that, what you would need to do is you would need to say, is this system related, network related? Is it user related? Is it, so, and then you would also have to think about, is it external or internal? So once you have identified the type of incident that you're dealing with, then you are going to contain. So containment is really about stopping it from going further. Eradication is about removing it, but this doesn't always happen. So in the case for data leak, you are going to try to have containment. So you have to follow where that data went. And then to be able to stop it from being spread further. So if it is distributed in the dark web, right, a lot of the times there are investigation, we would have to go in and see how the data is being exchanged in hands and how it's going to be spread through a certain type of server. Possibly we'll be able to stop it from spreading further. In most cases, you see that they track it, but they won't be able to stop it because it becomes someone's property and it is a little harder. So you have to get law enforcement involved, and then they're going to authorize the companies that's hosting the servers that are sending out the data to stop, right? Or removing those servers in general. And then we do the recovery. So the CSIRT here is the Computer Security Incidents Response Team. You would be able to have passive activity in analyzing and identifying incidents. After that, we would take actions in how we would contain, eradicate, and recover. So recovering means that if we have loss of data, we are going to rebuild the data. If we have data leak, right, we have to stop that leak from a certain system. And then we would educate our user. Then afterwards, this is what you have to document, your lesson learned, and how to meet internal and external evidence retention requirements. Okay. All right. So before we talked about the retention requirement, you have this picture right here to help you visualize the phases in response. So if you go for ethical hacking, this certification, I think part of Security Plus, you will also have to know IRP. And then if you go for CISSP, definitely IRP. That's a big emphasis. And then other security certification, GIAC, those will also reiterate this. Okay, so here it talks about the type of hardware and software that you need. A lot of times we need storage, we need packet capture software. If it's network related, we need forensic software. And some of these you can also purchase forensic systems, very expensive. That's 27A. And then for analysis and detection, this is NIST recommended. Okay. So for the activities, I break it down into sub areas. So the textbook did pretty good. So I try to summarize it as much as I can. So that way it's not a lot of information that you need. Any question? Okay. All right. So the post activities, they give you these questions. And so that's how I was able to derive some of the answer later. The lesson learned, you can find that here on page 3. So how can we detect certain things, or how can we look at the type of rules that we're working with and whether the evidence that we have is needed? This touches a little bit on forensic. We will have a chapter that's focused specifically on forensic. We'll use some of the forensic tools that are available that's popular now. So the policy that you need to evaluate or use is the retention policy. Every company uses different retention policy. That could be a few years, that could be 10, 12 years, depending on the compliance requirement. So if we're dealing with healthcare, that's a little bit different than when we're dealing with credit card information, or compared to like retail versus medical versus other areas like government, like FISMA. So retention can also pertain to resources that are available, the storage costs, the type of services that they incorporate for storage. So much of it has to do with the dollar. So some company, like when you're looking at communication company like T-Mobile, Verizon, they're required by law to retain your data, your text messages, your communication, all your logs, your contact phone number, your bill, your statement. Your bill and your statement probably archived for a long time in case of if you want to contest it. But in the retention, your text data and your multimedia message data is retained for 3 to 5 years. I think they really fought the regulation because I think the regulation was trying to expand it to 5 to 7 years. But these companies were saying that it could be costly because if you have 3 million users, that can be a lot of money, right? In the case, if you look at social media, that's a lot of money that they have to retain. Data centers that they have to build, and so on. So how can I tell whether it is a security event or not, right? Like we mentioned before, any form of alert or notification from your appliances, your security appliances like IPS and IDS, your security information management system, that's also going to give you some kind of information, whether it's security event. Security software, they do a really good job at looking at heuristic now. Sometimes that can be false positive, but we can use these overlapping area to be able to identify your security events. And of course, your hash checker, that's always important. So anytime we have a different hash, that's an indicator. Your third-party monitoring services. So if you're looking at like Cloudflare, they do a lot of security for cloud. They also charge for based on the type of service that they incorporate, and then or other type of security. So in the case where if I can have all-in-one package in the service, or I can outsource it to someone else. Logs, of course, and then public information like articles, journals, websites like Mitre, those are always so good. And also OWASP things, always so good for you to kind of use. So this requires, sometimes it requires expertise in certain area, right? So if you fall into the expertise area, that's also good. So going into logs can be a lot of things. And we talked about this before when we talked about infrastructure, the type of logs that we're working with last time. So everything is, we can log a lot of things like services, application, network devices, things that are connected. But in your log policy, these are some of the general things that you need to state. So a policy is a document that we specify, right? The type of services and things that we would support in an organization. So in a logging policy, we want to state the type of services that will be logged. And with that, you would follow that document to be able to configure your logs. So if I'm logging all the failed attempts, let's say in authentication, that could be good because I wanted to see if, number one, my users are effectively logging into their system. So if they failed a lot, that means that, you know, they're not using their password effectively or using authentication effectively. But I can also use that toward brute forcing, right? Or some form of attacks. As brute force is gonna keep trying different passwords. So I can look at successful attempts for a certain type of service or a certain application. Now, application, we can log things like errors. We can log things that would relate it. These two always go together, I think, in my opinion, from a perspective of a system administrator. You always have an application using many different services. That could be web application, it could be database application. Okay. And then your network devices. Basically, that's communication. Now, how long you're gonna store the records is important. Okay. Because if you ever configure logs like event viewer, you can specify how much data you want to store and when it overwrites, right? Logs, sometimes when it reached the cap for the storage, it will write over the existing one. So your job is, if you need to retain this for years and years, is you take your records that you store and you archive it. Because when, let's say 2 years from now, we might need to go to court about someone leaking data internally from our company, then you can pull the logs for that particular system, right? And this is a huge task, right? I used to do backup and I hate backing up logs. But in security, that's what we work with. All right, any questions? Yes, log, and you know, the nature of this particular field is, yes, you have to look through logs. Logs can be, I'll put that back if you're still working on it. So evidence retention is here, right? And it goes a little bit further, explaining to you on what we should discard. When you deal with legal aspect, always consult legal expert before you delete records like logs and evidence. This is important. Even if we close the case, right? Because they can come back and they can sue the company back, right? Because sometimes, you know, the legal requirement, so civil litigation can be, or criminal prosecution can also be extended or revisit. So here's the foundation of the response components. Okay, so we'll talk about this when we get to the questions. So in a network environment, when you're dealing with security security incidents, you are going to look at your traffic. Okay. So it's always good to run your traffic monitoring tool like your sniffer in the back if you don't have that incorporated. So in SIEM system, they already have that feature in monitoring network, and you can also use your appliances, even your router and switch, you know, they generate logs anyways for communication. So that snapshot of your traffic is going to tell you a lot more about what's happening at that moment in time, or if it's live. So if you have an incident that is suspected, what you can do is you can use it to detect, right, the critical area or the attacker attention to that activity. So if I'm being attacked currently, right, my traffic should show that. I just told the high school students about Wi-Fi access, how unsafe that was. right? And then Wi-Fi pineapple, how easy it is to do an evil twin. So traffic will give you the bigger picture. Okay, that's crucial. So when you go through and you work with, at the end of your incident handling, right? So when you look for security job, you're gonna see a lot of incident handling type of job. That's the front line of security. Those are like the firefighter in security, right? You put out fire, right? Or you're responding to, it could be that your system is being attacked right now, and you have to find ways to stop it from bleeding, okay? Or in the case where we are reactive, it could be that your system it's been attacked, right? In most cases, you're gonna see that they attacked or they had intruded. There was an intrusion, incident was recorded, it went undetected. They came back, right? They would leave back door, they would find a way to come back. And then when they would take a lot of data, that's when it blow up, right? So you kind of have to go back, because that incident can be related to other incidents, right? Just like how when we look at crime, right? One crime can be related to other crimes, and so on. So you have to draw that correlation, and finding information is the main goal in this particular field. Okay. So for the information, we need to include on what we can improve in the later, right? Like, so you need to put down the type of incident that you're dealing with or you dealt with, the time of the incident. So your logs is going to give you this, right? The timestamp. So if I have activities that are through email, right? I can look at the email history information, the email headers. There are a lot of tools that we can use in forensic for this. The type of response that we use to be able to handle that incident. So in some cases, right, it is critical, right? Everybody is involved, because, like maybe if you have to now service attack on your major web servers, and if you are online retailer, that's a big thing, right? So that's highly critical. And so your response team would be all on board, and they would be able to, once it's activated. So the team is only going to go into action when the leader or the decision maker activate that team. So very similar to what you see with the military, right? They have to declare a certain type of action for that to be activated. So first you have to know what kind of incident you're dealing with, and then the impact level for that incident. And then based on that, they make a decision. Are there incidents that they're going to say, oh, we're not going to spend all of these hours with all of these teams. We're going to send 1 or 2 people to handle that incident because it's really small, right? Eventually it's going to impact it on the bigger level, but that can be dealt with over time, versus something that is more critical that you have to address it immediately and it has to stop now, right? So that could vary. And then the type of procedure that you use to recover. You have to assess the communication. So the channel of communication, was it effective? So a lot of the time we fall down in this area. From the time that we activate the response until the time that we handle and fix everything and we recover is too long. Most of the companies, that's what you see, because the issue is that we don't effectively communicate. We don't effectively carry out the action in time. And, from physical security to logical security, you see this. As a nation, I think United States can do a little bit better in this area when we're looking at like national security incidents, right? In general. And we learn a lot from 9/11. So that changes now, or it's been changed. So after you have documented this, you have to take a look at what can you improve. It's always good with the lesson learned. The indicator for future detection. something that was noticed or goes unnoticed, that should be recorded. This is very important. Okay. So as an analyst, your area, right, is this. And then sometimes you also have to provide corrective actions. Now, even if we don't fix it fully, or we don't recover fully, we should document what could we do better? What could we do to prevent that from happening? Right? And then the tools that you use. All right. So earlier, we touched a little bit on retention for evidence. And we talk about why we should retain some evidence for legal matters. So evidence ultimately, just like the CSI show or the show that you see on TV or YouTube or wherever you watch your media, evidence is really about litigation, right? Lawsuits. It's whether criminal or civil, okay? So we should consult legal experts like attorneys to be able to see how long our evidence should be retained and when we should discard it. And when you store it, I think that goes into forensic a little bit. You have to make sure that it's secure, right? Only certain investigators should be able to access it, and so on. So we talked about that in 27A. You always refer to policy, which states the requirements and the rules on how evidence is retained, where it stores, how long it stores, who have access to it, what type of system it is retained on. And if it's not used or not, if it's not used, then we should be able to archive it. And where does it go? All right. So earlier we saw the components, and you can grab it from the notes there so you don't have to retype it. But I kind of want to summarize this so you know what it is. If it helps to type it so you can remember, sure. So in your incident response plan, so for the bachelor students, right, for the master students and even doctorate level, they drill this into you, right? So if you want to become a CISO one day, you might have people who write this for you, or you have to write it yourself, right? You have to come up with an incident response plan. So if you're looking at T-Mobile, Verizon, all the AT&T, the communication company, they have incident response plan for different areas. For things like emergency, like earthquake, storms, things like that, on how they'll be able to respond to those things, okay, drastic measures. Or in the case where their cell towers get bombed or attacked or, you know, jeopardized in any way, that would take out that part of communication for that location. So how do they address that, right? So in different aspects, what you see is you need to make sure that you have the commitment from management. And that's not always supportive, but it is a way that we can overcome some of the challenges in security. Did you know that statistically shown that the companies who don't have business continuity plan and incident response plan don't last more than 2 years? So businesses have to have some form of incident response plan. Just like at home, you tell your family member, right? Like, if something happens, this is where we go, right? If you haven't done that, you should, okay? If the house fall down, this is where we're gonna meet, right? If you're out in the street and if an emergency happens in the state, right? Like if we have an earthquake and we can't go anywhere, this is how you're gonna talk to me, or this is how we're gonna communicate. This is where you're gonna go to get emergency food. So it's exactly like that for the company. You need to state your objective of your policy, the scope of your policy. We're gonna break this down a little bit more. Okay. So when I teach bachelor classes, I make them write this, and they always hate it. because it's a lot of things. So this is the foundation. So if you remember this, it's going to help you outline what goes into that document. You need to define what the incident. So you would have a table and you would list all different incidents, right? Data leakage, what does it mean? And you have to make sure it's in plain English, because there are people who are not technical reading your document as well. Okay. And then other related terms. So anytime that we put together a document, always define our technical terms, your acronyms, and so on, right? Structure and roles, who's doing what and who authorizes. Prioritizations and how we would rate the severity. So if you're doing, low, medium, high scale or point scale, you need to state that and provide the scale information. How is the performance measure for the team? Okay. So this is always subjective. I think when I do audit, I always take a look at this as a way that people view this subjectively. Performance, is it effective level is really depend on what you perceive, but we have to consider based on the recovery, on how quick you recover, and if we can quantify that to data, that's always good to measure. Okay, so for example, if I have data leak, let's say I have 80% of my data was leaked, and that happens to some communication company recently, right? I have to really quantify that to the amount of data and how that can be recovered and where does it go, right? And that really measures how they perform. Did they stop it? Did they contain it? Is it 10 for the effective level from 0 to 10, or is it only 5, right? I'm a quantifiable person, so when I do analysis, I like using numbers. It's easier for me than just ranking it in categories, because ultimately you have to really quantify it out to, percentage and decisions and all of that. So it's easier to kind of draw the correlation into your decision-making process. Your contact forms and information. So how are we communicating with people if our network is down? So if your network is attacked, because people is like, oh, call me on my smartphone, right? Text me, send me an email. What if you don't have access to email? What if you don't have access to your mobile devices, right? How are you going to communicate? Okay. Go to so-and-so office, right? You have to put that down. How are you going to report? Okay. So we talked about the foundation for the response. Ultimately, you have to put down the step-by-step procedure. Okay. So one day you might be hired by a company, and this is very common. I actually had 2 of my students intern for a company, and this is what they have to write for that company, an incident response plan. And the ironic thing was, during that time, when they were building out this plan, that company was getting attacked. So they came to me and they were like, oh, so how should we respond? We don't have a plan. And so I was like, first of all, you need to report your attack. So they had to contact the FBI and so on. So it was a company that make black box for airplanes. They're contracted with the government. And so at the end, they were able to have a bunch of stuff built from my students who were interned for free. We paid the students through one of the grant with the Department of Defense, and this is a few years back that I did. But they were such a small company that they didn't have the resources to do that, right? Like their engineers or their IT administrators. So, and that's what happens. Okay, so you might have playbooks, and playbooks are basically potential incidents and solutions for those incidents. So you would have like tools that you use, kind of like your tool belt built within for specific incidents. Okay. So as we move in gaining experience in this field, I recommend that you have, a way that you would catalog the things that you do. You document it, and you would be able to have like tools in folders and things like that you would install, or system that you would use. Okay. So these are called playbooks. Okay, so who are the members in your team? Your managers, they are going to be the authority figure who's going to decide, right? Especially when it deals with financial loss. So IT manager, business manager, executives, your C-level managers. Then you have subject matter experts. Some people are specialized in different area. So for example, right, for me, for a long time, I did a lot of networking stuff because that was my strong suit. And then I transitioned more on like application and web application side. So that's my area, right? And then other people, they might be in like data forensic, reverse engineering. So you would need those people who have specialized skills for different incidents. So you know, so this can be your technical team a lot of times would have a diverse group of people. I recommend that. Okay. Then your IT support staff, so, you know, I get questions in email all the time. Which certificate should I go for, the specialist or the analyst? So the higher level is the analyst. The first responder, specialist. Okay, so the specialist, this is the area that they operate in. And then sometimes analysts do operate here, analyst level 1. So for security analysts, sometimes that they would fall into this area. Okay. But you would see back and forth between these. And keep in mind that when you respond to incident, it's not always going to be phase 1 through 4. Sometimes you have to go back, right? Come back, and the picture shows that you're going to look back to the beginning, because gathering evidence, as some of you already learned from forensic, sometimes you thought you found everything that you need, but you haven't, right? So then you got to consult attorneys and legal teams. Large corporations have a legal team. I work for a company that my job at the time was to take the data. So they use a software to track all the web activities for all the users. And at the end of the month, I have to build out the data and give it to them and let them know that, oh, these people, right, even though the policy said that they can't use work time to do online shopping, but they do, right? So we have to look at the activities. So basically it's a spy software. And be able to kind of think out like about what kind of website that we would block so people will be more productive, or setting up proxy, right? So my job was that. And what that does is, you know, ultimately you incorporate some kind of solution based on your analysis and your activity in your network. So your role in the organization sometimes, you know, as administrator, sometimes you don't always do the same thing, and you would get into certain area, and then some of it is also politics as well. Then your human resource, we need to communicate. So they do the PR, because reputation is always important for companies that are very large, right? Like imagine if you find out that Tesla is hacked, would you know, they would suffer some loss in that from reputation wise. Any question? So the notes just have a little bit more. You can summarize it down, or you can just type it out, whatever you like there. And I got one more bullet, sorry. And then your leader, who's going to coordinate and direct everybody. I know we would normally recommend 2 people instead of 1, right? In case you have someone that mainly do it, and then you have a backup person. Never entrust all the major activity into one person, right? You know, you guys know about separation of duty already. So if you trust everything in one person, if that person quits, or if they're sick, or if they're not able to respond in time, then you're sitting duck. So you have to have alternate options. We always operate in a mode where we don't trust, and we always overplan. That's how security works. So earlier we talked about scope. And scope for incident response plan, you have to focus on these areas. Who's going to activate the team? What type of responsibility for the departmental level? Each employee, sometimes it doesn't have to be at employee level, but, and then your team in the processes. So in the case when we're dealing with ransomware, it might impact some employees or everyone, right? If they drop a ransomware, if someone download and it's spread in the entire network, we have to contain it and we have to recover from it. So that means that it could impact everyone or some. Okay. Then you also have to think about the scope and how you are going to deal with law enforcement. In the case where it becomes a criminal matter, you have to, any type of cybercrime, you have to report it to the police. FBI has a way that you can report attacks, so you fill out a form online and then they would assign an agent to contact you. So I helped that company through the process. I was joking with him and I said, my consulting fee is this much. But since, my students are working for you, I'm not charging, but I will not hold liability in the case that, if you don't have a complete solution, because it's not, I'm not contracted with them. But you can also, look at ways to be able to incorporate third-party services. If you're using third-party services, that's also external communication. Okay, so if you outsource this to, I don't know, Rapid7 or one of those security company, then you need to talk to them, right? You need to let them know if they're not detecting, then maybe their services is not worth the money. I'm not saying that that's Rapid7. I'm just giving an example. Internal communication, how are we going to be able to communicate internally as an organization and for your team? And then trigger for escalation of responsibility. That is, you have to have that indicator where, so let's say that someone is scanning your network. Not a big deal, right? That's just an event, but it becomes an incident when they're attacking your network, right? So that trigger, how are we going to be able to detect between a security event and a security incident? That trigger escalate the responsibility right away, because security events, we just monitor that. And possibly if we want, we can, we can block them. Okay, we can set ACL and block them. But for the security, when it becomes an attack, when it becomes an incident, that's a different thing, right? We have to contain, and then we have to see like, what's the objective in their attack? What are they trying to do, right? Because it would show, looking at your logs, what their attempt would be. So if they have escalation of privilege to be able to get into the network, they are really looking for a certain system. Most attacker, once they execute, if they are experienced, they already plan out everything before they enter, right? My analogy for robbing the bank in CIS41A, right? They read the blueprint before they enter the bank, because nobody would just run in there, stick people up, and get money. Those are the inexperienced attackers. Okay. You should always test your IRP because, sorry, I didn't highlight this. You should always test your IRP because you want to make sure that the organization is able to carry it out. Okay. Coming from a backup operator from way back in the day, right? My experience with backup is a way that we have redundancy for our data, right? But if you do backup and you don't test your backup, when you recover and you cannot recover because your backup failed, then you're done. Okay. Same thing with emergency response and incident response. If you have a plan, but you never practice it, this is why they do fire drill and earthquake drill and all of that, just to make sure that everybody knows what to do. So same thing, you need to test it to make sure that you're able to respond when it happens. So for the external communication, you know that we deal with law enforcement, with your partners, right? In the case if they have partners and then vendors. Because your incident might impact them. So you have to notify them. But do you notice that the PR aspect of incident insecurity comes way later? Most companies don't go to the public and say, oh, this happens to me today, right? They already have corrective action, everything in place before they actually announce it. Unless someone finds out, right? Maybe a journalist that had gone through and looked at some of their stuff and they might have found out, or an investigator that did that. But a lot of the times you hear about it days or months or weeks later, right? So because they already have ways to be able to recover from it, because it just looks bad if you can't recover from it. There, cryptocurrency, you guys hear about that? They ended up going bankruptcy when they lost so much money because all of these claim about cryptocurrency is so safe, right? And so once that breach happened, the company that it happened to, they filed bankruptcy. But they, right before they filed bankruptcy, a week before he was announcing that he might recover from it, don't take your money out, we still gonna be able to recover. Sure enough, they filed bankruptcy right after that, right? So a lot of times, like, PR is PR, and we gotta really look at the reality of things. And so for those people who lost the money, it becomes a legal matter now, right? I invested, let's say, $100,000 into it. How am I gonna recoup? This is not my fault. This is the company's fault, right? But if they file bankruptcy, how are they gonna be able to compensate? So for our lesson learned, a lot of time we have to reflect on the scope, or even when you're planning, right? So how can I tell whether this is going to be a great impact or not? If we need to determine the scope of impact in our incident response, we have to look at the gap, right? Impairment is about the gap in where we are compared to where we need to be. I don't care whether you are, Fortune 500 or a small company. Everyone has security gap, right? We know that system have flaws and network design have flaws and people have flaws. So we have to take a look at the gap or the impairment in the organization to recover from an incident. That could be years or months or days or hours. So in that, we have to take a look at that gap and see how much of that equates to resource money and to be able to come back to where you were. Okay. I'm pretty sure when you look for security job, you're going to see a lot of this. Okay. And if you are able to work in this area, you have to know forensic tool, right? You have to know how to build all of this out. You have to know how to be able to respond to certain type of incidents. You can make a lot of money. Even when you work for NSA, it's like this. Funny, it's I got a call recently. Someone is applying at NSA and I'm supposed to validate for this person. So an agent is coming to see me next week, actually. Yeah, this is like the 5th time. Colleague. Yeah, but I've done that for former students before. When I was working at another place, one day I was teaching in class like this in the afternoon, and men in black showed up at my door. I just thought that, oh, it was only in the movies, but they came and they brought files and they sat me down and they asked questions for former students. I actually have one former student work for the CIA. He does surveillance for CIA. And then a couple others that work for NSA. It's easy to get in, actually. You have to move to Virginia because sometime you can contract with a company like Booz Allen, who, if you ever watch Snowden movie, he contracted with Booz Allen. So they contracted. I have family members that work with the DoD. So, they can't be on social media, they can't do a lot of things, so you're pretty restricted. However, my cousin from FBI, he's all over social media. So it varies. Oh yeah, so Alfonso put San Bernardino County Sheriff Department got hacked 2 weeks ago and they're still recovering. Yeah, county. I think their school district got hacked 2 years ago, a few years ago. And I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. All right. So we talked about scope. Thank you for sharing that, Fonzo. What is the determinant of functional impact? Because it talks about functional impact and incident impact, right? In responding to a security incident. Of course, right? Common knowledge, we should know the critical levels of the data. So this is really parallel to what you do for data classification. Yeah, your highly sensitive data. If that's the case, if you have the leak for the highly sensitive data, that's a critical level. That's a highly critical level. So that means that your functional impact level is high. So you have to find ways to make sure that you protect that data, right? After you recover. Because if you recover and you're not protecting the things you didn't apply what lesson that you've learned, no point. And that happened in many companies. Target, for example, right? Repeatedly, T-Mobile repeatedly. Because even if you recover, it doesn't mean that you're fully safe. They can go back and redo the same thing or hit other areas. System and processes affected by the incident of the organization, the ability to continue providing services for the users after the incident. What should be included in the breach classification? So, like I mentioned before, your data classes is really associated to data breach. So how you classify your data, that will be correlated to your data breach level. This chapter is actually really short. It is shorter than most. Okay, any question? Give me a little bit and I will post your lab shortly. Sorry. My week, this week and possibly next week will be a little crazy too, but if I can get through Wednesday, then I'm good. Thursday is usually pretty good. That's what I tell myself every week when I start on Monday. If I can get through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I'm fine. Oh, really?
I did like a taste test because I had family fun on Sunday. And I made coffee for everyone. And I really liked the room. And I was surprised that the light roasted still had a strong taste.
Yeah. Yeah. If you guys like coffee, Peruvian coffee, or it's the Arabian bean still, but it's grown in the Peru, but in the higher region in the mountains. My husband's from Peru and he always brag about it. But yeah, I'm not a coffee drinker. I'm like instant coffee if I needed to, but I'm not drinking coffee too much. But yeah, Peruvian coffee is good.
It definitely tastes better than the Costa Rican coffee.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Even my uncle, he like kept bragging about my coffee to his daughter, and she texted me. She said, "Can you please tell me how you made it?" Because he keeps talking about it. And he wants me to make it. So I found online that they sell those thin coffee beans.
Yeah. So I got that Peruvian one from Sprout. You can find them online for cheaper. My family, they also use another brand. You can find organic ones.
Yeah, that was organic.
Yeah. Sprout carries a lot of things that are organic. Hold on one second. Let me grab the lab. I'm going to use the lab from 27A because I think it will be relevant to today's information. And I know some of you already took 27A, but it's a good review for you. Give me 1 second. Okay, let me relabel the file. Because I wrote a lab with Explico, and then if you don't have SQLite running properly on the Linux system, because it has dependency with other area, then so I read their documentation, I troubleshooted a few times. I just didn't have enough time this week to fix it, but I will implement it for your forensic lab, which is in a few weeks. Okay. Also, if they approve for me to go to this conference with the STEM students, on the 8th or the 9th that week, so I'm gonna go from the 8th to the 11th, I will put out an email and notification.
About vacancy?
Yeah, that I will record video for the lecture. You will not have to come on Wednesday. And then I will have you do like the practice exam or a lab online or something like that for that week.
Anytime, thank you.
Can you guys do me a favor on your Windows 10 on the app? Can you search to see if they install NetworkMiner on there for me? I had asked them to do that and they confirmed, so.
NetworkMiner, yeah.
Okay, good. All right. We don't have to, because I've been talking to IT about, I don't want to use virtual machine on Windows 10 because it's pretty crappy. I want to use these security tools to the system so where it's capable of using all the cores. All right, let me post it. Yeah, we're gonna do the NetworkMiner one. And then in the future, we'll revisit some of the Wireshark stuff. Sorry, let me post it. NetworkMiner.
Yeah.
No, you can't install it. You sure you don't have it?
It's 2 words, right?
One word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have it? If you search for network, does it have it?
I tried 2 words, then 1 word.
Okay. If not, what we can do is I'll switch to the lab. Or you can do it with Gabe or use another computer. I have to talk to Alan because he swore that he did everything in this
You could have the first roll of rolls, but not the
You can't sit with us. Hey, I don't know if you guys know, but Monty's Market next door has a grocery store now. And you know, you guys can just go and get groceries.
for
Like,
free.
For free. They have like toiletries, milk, eggs, snacks. They have a bunch of stuff. The only thing is you only can go once every 2 weeks. You can literally go right now, right across, and the back side is the grocery, like this little ramp right here. Right on the side. You literally go in the back and you have to just write your name and like your ID to show that you're registered. And you can do whatever you want. Yeah. It's what you do. I took a tour like last week, I think, and I was like, yeah.
See if you turn on the computer next to you to see if that one has it. He told me that they had some issues installing these things. Or you can work with someone. No? Or yeah, let me set the due date and then we'll be good.
A buyback version of straight away.
Also, I have no idea what that is, but
So-
yeah.
So straight away is an old movie,
It's like an anime.
yeah,
Okay.
about a girl who like goes to a tunnel, but I think that's whatever. Yeah. He has to work with her spirit girl. So he can do a thing. That's. But then it turned into a live action. I haven't seen the original because I've seen other, the other movies by the same guy, but, they also have a music, like musical lines in it.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, it should be. Yeah, it was fun. I got to see it with
Okay, so it should be. So I was planning to use Explico, which is kind of like this, but NetworkMiner is one of the best forensic. Well, in the industry, it's one of the better ones to investigate malware. So whenever that you dealing with malware on the network, NetworkMiner is good, right? So you can run this on different OSs. Okay. And then the person who created this, he used to be part of Black Hat conferences. I don't know if recently that he's done anything with the, but you can go to the website, it's open source. They do have the upgraded proprietary version that has more bells and whistles, but we're gonna use the free version. So I wrote this originally long ago when I did this with my online class. And then so they have to install it on different OSs. But if you are using Windows, you can just simply use it. Okay. And so when you investigate, it's suggested that you use Security Onion to be able to you know, download things and test things, or you can use, you know, virtual machine. So, but to kind of give you the preview for this lab. So this is a company, right? This is their IP address range for the LAN segment. So they're using 10.8.21.0/24. So that's going to be from 0 to 255. This is their domain. They have a domain controller. This is its address. So when you investigate, this is the type of information that you have to ask the company. What is your DC? What is the IP address, right? Sometime when you do double blind for testing, for like pen testing, they don't give you the information. So you kind of have to scan and find out. But we're given the domain controller. So domain controller, we know that it's running DNS and, you know, it probably have authentication capability, possibly Windows, right? So their gateway, this is their router. And then the broadcast address. Okay. So you don't need to install NetworkMiner if you already have it installed on the system. I gotta talk to Alan about the rest of the computers in here. I have to buy him some coffee too. So whenever I want them to do something, I gotta go to knock and yeah, I bribe them with something and then they'll do it for me. Yeah, I gave him a Starbucks gift card, so maybe I need to give him a bigger gift card.
Gold. I get so excited when I look at it.
All right. You need to download the PCAP file, and this is the capture that you have. So for step 4, you just need to download it. And if you're not familiar with this website, after you take my forensic class, you will be. This is a really good website for you to obtain, you know, traffic, different type of images that you can use for practice. Okay. So you are going to download the zip file. So once you click the link that I provided there, and they shouldn't block you on here. Okay. At home, if you have security things implemented on your browser, you might want to enable for that link, but it should be fine. And then you're gonna download the PCAP file. Now, I'm gonna let you know now. The traffic has malware coming through. Your security software, if you run this on your home computer, it's gonna try to take it away, contain it, okay? So McAfee will do that, Symantec will do that. However, you should be able to perform that here. So once you download the PCAP file, so which one are you downloading?
The first one.
Yeah, the first one, the zip. And then when you're done, we want to delete it, right? We want to remove stuff, so you can leave NetworkMiner on there.
Have you extracted it?
Yeah, when you extract, it might ask you for a password and it would be infected. That's one word, infected. So once you download, it's gonna go into your downloads folder and you're gonna right click. And if you have, when, 7-zip, you can extract files through 7-zip. And if you just have the Windows tool like me, you can use that. I upgraded to Windows 11 and it took out some of my tools, so I just got lazy and I want to install it again. Okay, so it's gonna prompt you the password like this, and we're just gonna type in infected. So if you have infection on the network, you need to have that capture. So you can use Wireshark, some form of capture, even Kane. There's lots of tools that you can capture traffic. And then you would save it as a PCAP. Once you have the PCAP, then you would use another tool like this one, NetworkMiner, to analyze. That's the point, right? So I'm teaching you that in the case, if you have network malware infection, this is what you do. So we have to kind of find out who got the malware, right? And boo-boo on that person. But sometimes accident happens. Then we need to make sure that we train that person and control the system. Okay. So once you get the PCAP file, you are going to open up NetworkMiner, and I hope my NetworkMiner is still there. I doubt it though. Of course not. Thank you, Microsoft. Let me install it real quick.
Professor, NetworkMiner, did you include that in Wireshark?
It does more than Wireshark. You can do investigation in Wireshark, but I like this tool in that visibly you see a lot more. It's able to give you more, like the password and the user account and all of that. Yeah, so it is a preferred tool for. So let me get my installation going while we're talking about this. Sorry, I just assumed I had it before. Okay. So it looks like this, right? Very similar to what you see with like Nmap. Okay, so we're here. You are gonna open up your NetworkMiner, and then you are gonna click File, and you're gonna open the capture that you have. Okay, if you have suspicion that something had gone into your network, right? You capture your network traffic, and then you are going to open. Okay, so I had extracted it in my downloads, right? So I'm just gonna navigate to my downloaded extracted folder and then obtain that. So now it's gonna read it. Okay. So this is basically I'm bringing in the traffic and I would see. Okay, any questions? Then after that, what you're gonna do is you are going to see all the information from that capture. And it's gonna give you, and this is what's nice about it, it's gonna look for all the hosts for you and then the files for you. So if there was something that was transmitted during that captured traffic, network traffic session, right? You're gonna see that. So it's gonna give you the host, the files information, even the system information. So the hosts are your system names, right? And then even the account information. So when you look at the hosts, it tells me that there are 54 hosts. Right? And then you would see the traffic with IP addresses from, to, and so on. And then the files.
I don't have any files that show up on my.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You open the extracted folder, right?
The hosts show and all the other ones like the session, DNS, primary, it's files.
That's okay. So it should be 100 and something files. That's weird. That's strange. Let me talk to IT again because I don't think they did it correctly. But possibly that if they don't have the right files and stuff. But
You think if I select a specific network adapter, that'll make a difference?
Yeah, you can try it, but I don't think it matters. Because I didn't select anything on mine. Just make sure on when you load the file, it's from the extracted folder. So this happens, I know why. I think that if they have security software running in the back, it might block it. Right? So you might not see everything. So keep that in mind. Okay. Yeah, I turn off stuff. Sometimes you have to turn off things like your network, your defender. So to answer this question, I'll help you out. How many hosts identified? We said 50, what was it? 54. And then the files, we actually have 136. Sometimes security software will give you, it will block some, sometimes it will block all, sometimes, so. Sorry, I didn't grab some of the sweet stuff from my car today, and the high school kids kind of cleaned me out on snacks today, so. Because I was like, first I was giving them for every answer that they answered, and then after a while, I noticed that they were just like sitting there, so. All right, for the credential tabs, once we load it, we would go in here. And this is what's cool about NetworkMiner is it's going to give you the credential information. So I have Matthew Jones. And then I have Matthew Jones for NTML challenges. And then it also showed me the password information for Matthew Jones for that captured session. Because, he accessed the domain. So he authenticated to their network, and then he okay, so you can answer that question. So it asks you what kind of credentials. So it uses Kerberos and Matthew Jones lowercase. Do you guys get the credential too?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah, I just think you showed that like
So for the files.
the files and the keyword and the values.
Okay. So it asks you what is the username that's logged into Pizza Bender. We talked about Matthew Jones. What is the password? Is the password encrypted? Is it using NTLM or Kerberos, right? We learned about Kerberos technology. We talked about that before. Then we're gonna click the host tab and we're gonna locate his system, which is the 10.8.21.163. And you can expand the detail view by clicking the plus sign. So we're gonna go back to the host tab and you can filter as well, right? Here we sort by ascending. We can also look at certain host name. So if I click on the 163, this is his Windows desktop. I can expand it and I can get more information on that, right? So for the forensic people, we screenshot these things. We would document our artifacts, right? You guys recall that? But so when you're doing evidence gathering, you gotta make sure that you capture what you see for the people like attorneys and things like that for them to review. So here we would see Matthew's desktop. It's MAC address. Now you see this from T-Shark or Wireshark as well, right? You can get MAC, IP information, protocol services. So similarly, and very similar to Nmap, you also see OSs. Some sniffer will also give you OSs. And then ports information. Okay. So we would put down the MAC address information, the operating system, we know that it's Windows. And then the host BIOS name, we learned about NetBIOS a while back. NetBIOS is a way that system can communicate with other system by resolving by name instead of IP address. So it's using the host name. So when you go in and you click on the host details, right here, you should be able to find out more. So through this traffic, what you have is you would have the pizza vendor, there's the domain name information. There's the hashes, so it's showing the hash details. Then your username. So when we answer that question, right, go through that list and be able to address Kerberos username, NetBIOS username, and NTLM username. Should be pretty close to what we already had. There's your Kerberos, Matthew Jones. There's your NTLM.
Professor, in the real world, all of this would be encrypted, right?
Not always.
So let's say a private network and I use NetworkMiner. What information is going to be plain text and what isn't?
Wireshark, capture it on your home network,
Right.
bring it to NetworkMiner, you see.
It encrypts it?
It has information, yes.
Oh, so this, I didn't know it encrypted the information. Okay.
Some information, not everything is encrypted. Even if it's encrypted, it's really depending on the type of encryption the hash is used.
So it would display all the plain text information right there. Oh, wow, that's really cool.
So is Kerberos really strong? Not really. Based on documentation, it is. A lot of concept-wise, theory-wise, it is.
More of the authentication.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But even with that, it's still not safe. Nothing is, I really feel like the stuff that we use, we get by with it. Yeah. Okay. So once you have that information, you would go to the next part. Right, this is where some of you don't have this, so I will show. So on the files, we can do filter by keyword. And so you will have to investigate the IP address, right? If you don't know who that is. And then if there's something suspicious, so we're looking at this particular source. So here I'm at files. And then I'm gonna go ahead and paste in the IP address. So I can filter. So that it tells you that it's coming from port 80. And this is the server responding to the request from Matthew's computer. Right? The timestamp, remember how we have to document the incident for the timestamp? That shows you that here. So what I did was I already kind of narrow you down to how you can look at the cap file from that, right? But when you look at that list of the IP address and the communication, the files tab is useful in that it gives you the type of files that's being exchanged between the systems. So for this particular communication session, what you see is you see that this server is sending something to that desktop. And this is the file. So then we would take that file and we can find out what kind of malware is impacting that type of file or using that file. We okay? Any questions? So we know that Matthew's computer 10.8.21.163, we kind of narrowed that down earlier, right? This is the external server that's sending the file because it tells you where it's coming from, where it's going to. And using HTTP timestamp. So I think when we looked at this last one, I did it with my class before. We saw that this malware happens in like the window of like maybe 6 or 9 minutes. So 8/21/2020 at 3:04 p.m. Right. Are we good with this? We got it?
What would the file location be?
It tells you in the, well, because I'm reading the capture, it will be in the directory for the capture.
Network.
Yeah. It is reconstructed with the NetworkMiner.
So the directory of
Yeah, it's under that. That's why when you use security software, this is where it's gonna try to clean it. So it would put it in the containment area. So sometime it will remove it. Because you can download the same file because it's coming through the traffic. All right, so we're good with that, right? We talked about the timestamp, the file location. And then you're gonna right click the file and you're gonna do the SHA. So I'll do this for you. So we're gonna right click the file and then, sorry. Is it not letting me calculate the hash now? Oh, so they change it. So the newer version of this changed. So I right click and then I go to files detail. And then here is my SHA. Okay. So you don't have to put this long string in. You can skip that question. But I want to show you that you can view it. It's right here under file details. Okay. And then there's different. There's the MD5 and then there's that.
So is it creating the hash or just giving you the information that's already there?
It's giving you the information. Previously, they did have a feature where you can calculate it. But I think the later version of this, they took that away. I think that they probably, I mean, in my opinion, if you calculate the hash at that point, it doesn't make sense for investigation. So you should get the original hash. So it's already calculated. So they made it where it's automated already. So that's there. Now when you do investigation, you have to write down the hash information, the file location. So what I'm showing you is that's what you documented. That's what you have to write down. Okay, step by step. And then for the last write timestamp, did I show you guys that? The last write timestamp, it was 8/21/2020 at 8:04 a.m. Okay, so we got the information. We're now gonna go to the session tab and we're gonna filter out Matthew's computer. Right? We're gonna narrow it down and then we're gonna look at the information. So we suspected that, that same IP address or similar, the 190 is a different address than this one. So this other server might be also a suspicious server. Okay, so we're gonna go to session. And then you can filter out his computer, which is 10.8.21.163. So it just only gives you the information. Then you're going, so this is the one that we looked at earlier, the 190. Now we are going to look at the 45.147 dot this. So we can also filter that out if you want. So let me filter that, it's quicker. So if you filter that address, but basically when we filter Matthew's address, we see all the communication to and from his address for the traffic. Yeah, so here we would see that this is another server and it is like It's ldrbravo.casa. This uses HTTPS port 443, start time, and so on. So identify the external IP address that are suspicious. So if you guys have access to the sessions, right, you can take a look at Matthew's address and then see what other addresses. So I would use this one.
Because they're suspicious because it's not under the pizza vendor post.
Yes.
Okay.
So the 190, we saw that that was infected from the 190. That one should go on the list. This one, 45.
So would this be an adverse event?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a malware related event. You can also investigate IP, right? You can go and look up who is. You can look at, we talked about how we would look at, you know, the IP ranking or the domain ranking, how trustworthy those domains. So that's another way that you can find suspicious IP. So what am I doing with that? I can take it and I can and put it on my ACL, or I can set up my firewall rule, right? To be able to feature block it. So put down 3 or 4 IP addresses that you think could be suspicious. We already identified a couple, the 45, the ones that start with 45. And then lastly, you just have to fill out these fields, your name, today's date, the summary, put down what you found from number 10, 11, and 13. The incident date. We put down the timestamp earlier at the 3:04 p.m. or whatever. The effective system, Matthew's desktop, the computer name, Windows PC, right? And then the type of malware, or it was not the malware type, but the system type. Then the impacted, so the credential that's used there. Then the section for the victim's detail, so take whatever the answer that you had earlier and plug it in here. Okay. And that's how you write a report for investigation. I already put a template for you, so in the future, that's what you do. So now you can go home, run Wireshark, get a capture, run NetworkMiner, and you see everybody.
You would use both of them in conjunction with each other.
Yeah. Even when you can use Wireshark for forensic. We'll do one later on for forensic with Explico and other tools. I think people are really good at data forensic. That's easy to do, or storage forensic. That's pretty easy to do. Network forensic is a little harder because that's a lot of information. You have a lot of system, communicating back and forth. So you kind of have to narrow down on your filter and your search. And, this process might take a little longer in reality, right? I actually, have you filter out specific address because I already kind of knew like which one is suspicious, but you have to do a little bit of research. And sometimes you might not even find information for the fake servers or things like that, the malware distributing server. Sometimes they no longer exist. So, but now it's become, so once for sure that the malware, it is a malware, then, it is not just an adverse event, it escalated to a security incident. I think it's a malware, it's, I forgot the name of it, but it does impact domain access.
Security incidents, that's not the policy, that's security event, right?
So the adverse event is that Matthew downloaded a malware, right, where it's impacting, but he actually accessing these websites that are against the policy,
Right.
so it becomes a security incident.
And then you events, that's what it's like in the middle between them, right?
Yeah, security events is something that is related to CIA, but it's not negatively impacting the organization. Okay, so, but security event could be anything, where whether you're successful or you're, like, when you log in, that's a security event. Yeah.
Okay.
What, because it's successful, but when you fail to log in, that's also a security event. So it could be failed tracking or successful tracking or both, right? If I am granted permission to access files, that's a security event because I'm successfully, using my permission. But I'm accessing unauthorized files, that is also a security event. Now, if I'm successfully accessing, like, let's say your file, but you didn't allow me to, and I escalate the privilege, it becomes a security incident because now I'm violating the rules and I'm accessing something that's not allowed. Right? Unauthorized access is usually a security incident. But there's some small area that we have to look at. But however, now if I'm accessing your file, unauthorized accessing your file and deleting your file, it's both. It's adverse and it's. So, yeah, sometimes you have overlapping between adverse and security incident, but a lot of times security incidents is anything that's not authorized or following the rules. And then, so our recommendation, so this should come easy for you now, right? You already know that he downloaded a malware and from a website, so you would recommend for him to be trained. So I would send him through a year security, self-pay security training program. I think everybody has that. By requirement, we have to have users do that once a year anyway, right? We also need to do better with anti-malware protection. So we would need to look at our existing security software on our network and our system and the gap of that, right? So to really mitigate that, that means that the security software for that domain is not effective, right? They're not doing something effective in blocking malware, but you know that malware is only 60% known. So, but this malware is actually very popular. So if it's not detecting it, then we're doing something wrong. So we would need to maybe update or use a different security tool to be able to block malware. What else should we do?
Good question. 60% of malware is detected by
It's
this.
known
There's no, where's that statistic from?
anti-malware company. That's actually less than 60%. So in the internet overhaul, when you run your anti-malware, if it's recognizing a malware, it's part of that 60%.
Right.
Everything else is not known. It's kind of like on this earth, we only know the 60% people that exist.
Right, because the malware.
It's
signature
always
is changing,
changing.
Right. Now, who is that statistic from? I wanted to use it in my presentation, but I couldn't find the.
You can go to Malwarebytes research stuff. You just have to give them your spam email name, and then you can download the document. I might have some stuff on my CIS27 that, and it changes year to year. So they always give you statistics, but you have to look at their paper, right? Let me see. No.
So the 60% would be more the personal statistic rather than the industry wide.
No, that's across mostly. That's general. Generally, you're looking at like 60% or less. Yeah, so you're looking at it close to about 50-something%. Last I checked, it was like on the higher 50. Now, because one malware can propagate to different type of malware. depending on what they're writing it to be, right? Like, for example, if you're looking at like stucknets was used by the government, but now if you search for stucknets, it becomes so many other versions of it. The same thing with keylogger, right? You have variation of the same type of Trojan that does different things. Because it's just modifying the code. Let me see with my class if I have downloaded, but you can find semantic report, Malwarebytes report, those type of reports gonna give you the overall statistics. So it's more on like their company research, so it's their white paper, but in general, they have to look at the historical categories of malware, which is all the same across all kinds of companies. So when you're looking at like a ransomware, this percentage of ransomware is known, then, you know, that's the same for all the other companies too. Not necessarily that one company might be a little bit better than the other, but industry-wide, they use a certain signature and a certain definition for the heuristic to be able to determine. And then some of that is also coming from the report engine. So when things are unknown, you're supposed to, you know, your software is supposed to have that report option, or you can go to their website and then you can submit that file. And what they do is they take that file and then they reverse engineer it. That's how they're able to tell. So if it's unknown, so sometimes software would say, oh, this could be a threat, but it's just not known, like the behavior is not known to it, so it's not defined in the application. But it considered it outside of what its scope is, so it's just gonna contain it. So what you can do is if you're not sure, you take that file and you upload it to their report server, and then they would take it and they will analyze it, and they'll let you know. Because when you
Virus, something.
Uh-huh.
No, let's say that's one solution. Is there any benefits using a sandbox environment? If you pass it, right?
Yeah,
There-
but that's if you know what you're doing, if you sandboxing, right? Like you can just let it loose and then see what it does. But you have to know what kind of malware or the behavior of the malware to do that. But if it's unknown, then how you do that? You're just gonna hope and pray that, because sometimes if it has logic incorporated, it might not do anything right then and there. It might require logic
It's a specific.
processes or actions or time, or it could be a lot of different. So so you have to look at the code. So if you know what you're doing, then you can look at the code and reverse engineer. So you can run the binary file and you can look at the source code. And in the source code, sometimes there would be information. So you look at the function and the source code and all of that. And then you would execute it by chunk to kind of see. And that's how the engineer, they rebuild it that like that, right? So yeah, sandboxing is ideal if you have all the resources and time in the world and if you know what you're doing. But half of these people in the world have malware issues. They don't know what they're doing. So they have to find a way to submit it through a centralized system. So that way they can have the professional deal with it, like the person or, you know, Malwarebytes or some of those companies. So they would take it and the same thing, they would put it in a sandbox, they would reverse engineer it, they would, you know, determine. And, or if there is a signature for it that's not recognized, then they would take that and put it in their database and say, this is now the new signature for this, and they would give it. And then in some cases where it's like a rootkit that affects your RAM or your storage or your hardware, right? They have to test it using that type of environment as well.
Pretty much the antivirus companies will go the additional step in terms of reverse engineering in contrast to a sandbox.
Yeah, or if, let's say that if you outsource your security solution to someone else, they do that too, if they have the resources. But, you know, if you don't have the resources, you would report it, and there are ways that you can report it, right? Virus Total, a lot of people use it, so that way it can, there's a way that we can share that information.
Community.
Yeah.
Community stuff.
And then somebody will be able to take that and research it. It's kind of like you use Reddit. You would put a question in there, and if you don't know the answer, and somebody knows the answer, they will share it. So it is a way for us to kind of grow as an industry to really support things that are not known to us. Because a lot of these things, it's not coming from one place, right? So we have to find a way to really get the knowledge, build out the knowledge base worldwide. And then, but also control it from a standpoint where, okay, so if it's recognized, what are we gonna do about it now? So we're gonna have all the software to be able to implement it. So there are engineers and people that look at what's being recognized, what's new, what's not known, and so your malware definitions and signatures is always growing and changing. And hopefully we'll get to a point where it is better than what it is now. But it has always been like this, sometimes even less. There were years that we only had 30% or even, yeah. So, when I was in school and I was in the field, they talk about, they only push update in the middle of the week. Okay, so if you're using Symantec or McAfee or whatever, Wednesday or Thursday is when you update your anti-malware. Because, that's when they release updates. It's cost, it's also, bandwidth, there's a lot of aspect that goes into the resources. So administrator, we used to be like, oh, if they're gonna release the update in the middle of the week, we download it, we test it, and then we implement it later in the week. So now it is a little bit more frequent where it's live and it's always updated, or when the user decides, so at least if you're using your system regularly, you should update it on the daily basis, right? To kind of get the new information. But on a network environment, is that making sense to really pushing updates all the time, right? And we have to test updates all the time. We have manpower and bandwidth and other considerations. So this is when we fall down, is that we don't have the latest updates, and then there's new information. We're getting new malware and things like that. So that's the gap in the area for operations.
Those finding the sweet spot where you're getting the latest information while taking the least amount of time possible.
Yeah, and it sounds very easily done, but it's not, right? So we're always chasing, right? So that's the aspect of philosophy for security is always there. Ideally, you would have overlapping solution everybody's doing. And that's if you have tons of IT people, if you have resources, you have systems, you have software tools that you need. But for most part, we operate at baseline. We're always chasing, and we have other issues that are going on internally that we have to address. That's more immediate than some of the things. So, so that becomes, some of your tasks that's not prioritized, and then it becomes a major issue when it's being targeted.
Right.
So, in my opinion, is there an efficient, effective solution always for even in some area like malware? No. And that happens in every area for us, right? So, and when you getting all of these marketing about, oh, we build you like a seamless solution and all of these things. Yeah, somebody else is doing all of these work, the heavy lifting. But a lot of the times you have to make a decision on what is being addressed first and what's being pushed back. And the pushback could also become a critical issue now or later. So it really is a risk that we take in some sense. And so it's just how big is your risk appetite? And that's basically the game. So I think that for as long as there are problems, this type of job will always be there because we're always chasing. And that's the deal. So, yeah. Any questions? I think what was it? I was reading one of the book from PACT. I think they use there's a book called Security Analysis in Linux. I think that just came out recently. And most of the stuff that we've been using in Kali Linux in this class is also highlighted in that text, because I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I think I went over this one. So, but there's no way that you're gonna use all the tools in the world. As long as you know some of the major important tools that you use for certain things, that's gonna be good for the industry. And sometimes it's changing too, but NetworkMiner is a good one to learn. Okay, Wireshark is a good one to learn. You know, some of the newer tools, even though they're like every time that you use it, you have to troubleshoot it because it's still kind of very earlier in their development stage. Some of them are pretty decent. So you can take a look. This is why Kali is always changing. There's always new tool added or subtracted.
Sorry, I don't know that Metasploit had its own operating, had its own OS. I thought it was just a plugin, but apparently that the Metasploit OS is really vulnerable, so you can do a lot of testing on the right.
Yeah, Metasploit, but Metasploit is one of the most popular toolkits, exploit toolkit. But there are tons of other toolkits that you can use for specific things, like B for web application. You know, if you want to test or assess web app, you would use that. And there's some that's specifically for iOS.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, there's some, but I think there's like 115. Because I used to love like reading all of these like statistic stuff, and then I had a report that had listed all like I think it was from Malwarebytes or Semantic, I don't remember, but they do like, if you Google online for like exploit kit statistic, there's some anti-malware company that they gather that information, so they pull stuff from dark web and then different forum and channel, and they would take a look at like which toolkits are really popular in a certain year and what goes into these codes. So, and that kind of helped them build out the security software, because, you know, if you have things that are gonna open things up, then you have to close it. So so that's how they're able to sell some of the feature on the security tools that they package. Yeah, so it's kind of good to read.
Semantic is a software company?
Yeah,
Okay, I never heard of it.
yeah, they own Norton now.
Oh,
They are Norton. Semantic bought Norton.
wait, is it SY? Oh, okay, yeah, I've heard of it, just I guess it's the spelling. Yeah.
Yeah, usually it's like the yellow logo. Yeah, I had some stuff on that for the high school kids when I did yeah, I did one thing with a couple sessions with Canyon Springs. So I was just giving them some stuff on like attacks and things like that, because yeah, so here's some of the tools. So I was giving them some of the tools. We know some of these. So Datasploit, Aquatone, Spiderfoot is very popular. Fire Compass, Google Dorking. No, Google Dorking is just you searching on Google.
Oh,
Recon NG.
I think that was like a word.
Oh yeah, that's just recently coined as a term. Maltego is good. It used to ship with Kali long ago, but I don't know if it's still there. So the exploitation framework, you got like the Metasploit, that's really big. Beef, Armitage, so SQL Map, Aircrack NG, that's been around for Bluetooth and wireless, right? Core Impact, Canvas, Engineer Toolkit, SQL Ninja. So these are some of the recent ones. I wanted to kind of focus on database and web for some part, but I pulled some lists from different vendors and they, you know, commonly they listed me, so that's why I added.
Because it doesn't web don't have exercises for the single reaction. I think I used them on. camera.
Yeah.
It's like something go, but most I think of the workload.
Mhm.
One equals one or something like that.
Yeah, I thought I saw, they had some tutorial floating around.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can use practice. You don't have to use Kali, you can use any DB in Linux and you can just bring in the package and just run it. Some of my students, they prefer Ubuntu because they're more familiar with it, so they use Ubuntu and they just add like tools. So you don't have to use Kali. Kali is convenient in that they already give you the tools, some of the tools. But and the virtual machine is already made for you. But you can use others. You can use Parrot, you can use, you know. Yeah. I always talk to high school about stuff. So Canyon Springs and Valley View, they have like IT cyber patriot stuff, so they're more familiar. So earlier I was talking to Marietta and Temecula District. So when I went in there and I asked them what's phishing, and they just looked at me like, what are you talking about? Yeah. So I was trying to bribe them. I was like, if you give me an answer, I'll give you a Rice Krispie. Some of them kind of knew. And then I even asked them like, cause like I asked them, I said, what is a ransomware? And they were like, is it like a virus? And I was like, well, it is a malware, but you cannot say it's a virus. But they're trying. So hopefully they have some interest.
That's fun.
Yeah. I gotta do some cyber camp with Canyon Spring this year because I'm not going to Atlanta. So let me stop recording. But